things with this car, but I don't think it'll be enough for pole position, but then we might have just made sure that it is. I'm not sure it'll be enough for a win. I don't think they think down at Mercedes it'll be enough for a win either, but at least they're back in the game.
Haven't led a lap in the last 5 races, Mercedes. Their longest run in the hybrid era, but what a record they defend here at the Circuit de Catalunya. 9 consecutive Spanish Grand Prix poles, 7 front row lockouts in the last 9 years, and Lewis Hamilton winning the last 5 Spanish Grand Prix. Out onto the track, first driver, Lando Norris, changed his chassis. Well, his team changed his chassis overnight. Carlos Sainz also had a chassis change. Norris's problems yesterday, though, came after he was running over the curbs. How fragile are these cars at the moment?
Well, he was pretty aggressive on the curb, to be honest. We saw him go up wide on the exit of turn 9, dipped a wheel in the gravel, and you don't ever want to be there. It's got this double curve with a serrated edge, which puts a lot of energy into the bottom of the chassis, and I think that's ultimately what did the problem.
Also out on the track, his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who, like Lando, didn't get a huge amount of running in yesterday. Pierre Gasly and Lance Stroll joining them. You will hear the cheers when Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso get onto the track. It is a capacity crowd for each of the 3 days here. Formula One is back in business, Paul, in Spain. Go back to 2005, 2006, 2007, when Fernando Alonso was doing so well. The crowd flocked, and they've come back this year as well.
They have. I mean, you can see how hard it is to get in, but that's a great thing, isn't it? Because it shows the interest. But what a weekend, and what Formula One has been. There's been some epic races so far this year, and certainly when you've got Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso in there, it's going to get people behind it. Absolutely.
Ferrari had a front row lockout, of course, in Miami. Last double podium for Red Bull here was back in 2010. It's all to play for in 2022. And we welcome our viewers on Sky Sports main event as we see Fernando Alonso waiting patiently to get out of the track. Only 16th in the Drivers' Championship with 2 points to his name. Arguably could have been a lot more. He's one of the unluckiest drivers on the grid as it stands at the moment. But tell you what, Karun, out on the tracks, Lando Norris, take us through this lap.
Track temperature 42.8 degrees. He's got a headwind as he comes into turn 1, shuts the DRS for turns 1, 2 and 3. They were all having to lift off the throttle a little bit for turn 3. It's not comfortably flat in this 2022 generation of car, unlike in the past. Into turn 4, just feeding it in. Really important to make sure you don't go too wide through there. And into 5, you don't want to lock up the inside front. The track drops downhill. Turn 7, a really awkward, frustrating corner. You never feel like you've quite got it right. Lando went wide in the gravel yesterday, and in fact, even on this lap, it looked like he missed the apex by a smidge. Turn 9, this is where he also went wide on that left-hand side on that green curb, but on this lap, keeps it nice and tidy. Turn 10, this is now a long left-hander past the kink of 11 and into 12. This part of the lap now, the tyre temperatures have gone sky high. Norris on the medium tyre, so it will be a bit better than when we see them on the softs in qualifying in particular, but it's still a real challenge to make sure you've got grip for this final part of the lap and the chicane to get traction and drive up to the start-finish line.
And so let's have our benchmark time then in this final practice session, a 1:23.6 for Lando Norris. Fastest FP3 time last year was a 1:17.8 by Max Verstappen. We were into the high 18s, low 1:19s yesterday with Charles Leclerc. Pierre Gasly's come out on track and he's gone straight back in again.
There's a bit of smoke coming out the air intake there and something in the back. They've obviously got him out in a hurry. There's a few fire extinguishers sitting close to the car as well.
This is what happened when he came, as you can see, into the pits. A lot of smoke coming out.
Okay, stand by, Pierre. We have a situation. Get ready to jump out, please.
That's under the engine cover as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So something's not happy.
I mean, first and foremost, you look to the rear brakes and see if that's a brake fire, but I don't think that is, because that's coming from underneath the engine cover.
Well, when it comes out the airbox as well, I think that means it's deep trouble.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's coming out the front of the airbox, so that's definitely not a brake fire here. As we see Bottas on track. Now, he had a terrible afternoon property, didn't he? The car broke down
and
quite
not for
early
the
in the
first
session.
time this season as well. He's had a few terrible Fridays as Valtteri Bottas recovers well for the rest of the weekend, but when the car broke down with that engine issue, he's lost an engine from the pool as well. which is going to impact him later on in the season, when he'll probably have to take grid penalties with extra engines in his allocation.
Yeah, well, he's obviously got to a certain point in the year, but of course that engine that you were thinking about changing would have become a Friday engine in your backup, but you've obviously not got the luxury of that anymore. But Bottas will recover from it. It's a track where if you miss a Friday, it's not going to impact your weekend because you've done thousands upon thousands of kilometres around here, and equally you've done the winter testing, so you know where it is. But he's on the back of a very good performance last time out as well, isn't he?
It could have been an awful lot better, but he said he got distracted watching George Russell and Lewis Hamilton scrapping in their particular battle. Ran wide and the two Mercedes popped through. So I tell you what, while we watch Valtteri Bottas on the track, let's hear from both Mercedes drivers. Lewis Hamilton and, first of all, George Russell.
I don't know, to be honest, because in Miami we were quickest on Friday, and obviously here we're second. So let's see, the car's definitely reacting differently. We've got different limitations this time. We definitely don't have the porpoising in the straight, which is good, but we're still experiencing a bit here and there in the corners, which ultimately you need to dial it out through the corners. And I think, Red Bull still look very, very strong. They look the team to be reckoned with at the moment, and we need to go through the data.
Well, what do we read into that, the performance today?
Positive. Okay, yeah, super happy with the progress. So big thank you to everyone back at the factory for not giving up and for continuing to push. We're not the quickest yet, but I think we're on our way. It's the first time we've driven down the straight without bouncing. We still have some bouncing, but it's way better. And so yeah, there's starting to eke into a bit of the potential in our car.
It's nice seeing you with a happy demeanour, I think.
Yeah,
it really is.
But, it's still tough out there with the car, but it's much nicer than it's been before. So I'm really grateful for those upgrades. We now need to just try to fine tune them into the next session. So overnight, lots of data to go over and try to position the car. I think we can get it into an even better place for tomorrow, so that hopefully we can tackle the heels of the guys up ahead.
Not sure I've seen Lewis Hamilton looking quite so chirpy on a Friday after practice so far this season, but Paul and Karun, you know what it's like. You have a bad car and then suddenly you have a good car. Well, actually, Karun, you don't know quite so much about that in Formula One, with all due respect to your former teams. I don't think they ever gave you a good car. But say that again, Karun.
I tested a good one once in a while.
No, you tested a good one, that's very true.
This is true.
However, you know what it's like. Step out of a bad car and into a good car, and suddenly the world is a better place.
And I think that's the whole thing. I think that's going to change Lewis's mindset coming into this race, and I think that's the most important thing, because when you've got a happy Lewis Hamilton, he's going to excel, isn't he? And these are the weekends I think he's going to start to, get a bit of momentum, stable weather, push, because he had a solid weekend in Miami, and with that momentum I think you can carry through it. But if Lewis starts to be happier, I think that transfers into the factory and everybody around, and it's great for Formula One, because could you imagine the implications of this Ferrari-Red Bull battle? We've got Mercedes starting their elbows out in it. I think they're probably a bit far away to challenge for the championship, but they get their muscles in there, and it can change the dynamics of how we lead into the next weekend.
Here's a man, Mick Schumacher, that might have thought at one stage in Miami he'd come here to Barcelona with his first points on the board in Formula One. Sadly for him, he tangled and collided with Sebastian Vettel, and that rather ruined his race. It could have been a really solid weekend for Mick Schumacher. Is he a man that needs to start putting it all together and getting those point-scoring finishes, especially with the fact that his teammate, Kevin Magnussen, is doing just that so far this season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you asked Damon the question, didn't you, yesterday, about whether, in his second season, we should still give him some time. And I was listening down the paddock and thinking, in Damon's second season, he had to cope with the tragedy of Imola for his teammate and take on Michael Schumacher in a World Championship battle, and did a superb job, obviously. So, unfortunately, it's tough, Formula One. It's not a finishing school, right? You're expecting drivers to deliver to the highest level. So the fact that Kevin Magnussen's come back after a year out and has immediately been outpacing Mick, although Mick has started to come back in him, hasn't he? Miami, I thought, was his best weekend, wasn't it?
Until he collided with Seb with 5 laps to go.
With an over-optimistic lunge.
Yes, and it's frankly that. It's the awareness of when you go for a move, you've got to be sure at that point when you're going for points, isn't it? And more importantly, you've got to I guess not complaining on the radio as well when you kind of had made that mistake. Like, it was a bit of a surprise to you. You know, they're not going to hand you the position.
No.
So the team, when you get to Formula 1, like Karun said, this is not the finishing school. The finishing school is F3, F2, karting, all those things. That gets where you are, and you've got to deliver when you've put in the hot seat.
Yeah, I mentioned Kevin Magnussen, 15 points he scored so far this season. Highest points total by a Haas driver in the opening 5 races since Romain Grosjean back in 2016. It's been a fabulous return to the track for Kevin Magnussen. Can Haas get both cars into Q3 for the first time since Brazil 2019? We'll find out in a little while. Esteban Ocon is a man that has had a decent start to the season. 4 top 8 finishes so far this year, and has scored points in 8 of his last 9 races, although he and his teammate Fernando Alonso still not kind of pushing into the top 5 where I think Alpine would seriously like to be. Let's have a look at Yuki Tsunoda going through the chicane and taking a little more curb than is necessary.
That one would have hurt, wouldn't it? The team will not like that when all the race bits are on the car and you've launched it over there, especially when you've had a day to kind of familiarise yourself with that penultimate corner. But, you know, that's the nature of where you've got to gain some lap time. But a lot of people leaving it late to go out there and get a lap time. And I guess that's just saving the mileage and getting the track at its best.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, you know, yesterday we saw on the soft tyre runs, they go 1 lap. Literally, the peak performance was gone by the end of that. Frankly, the peak performance was gone by the end of sector 2, let alone a lap. So I think they're all waiting, aren't they? Because there's only a limited amount of sets of tyres they get per weekend.
Sector 2, by the way, is where Ferrari were particularly strong against Red Bull yesterday. Is that shouldn't be a surprise?
Everything we've got this year to show that's where Ferrari are quick. Anytime there's a corner, you look at Miami Sector 1 when they were on it, how close they could follow even in the race. That's going to warrant their lap time. It's obviously the first sector where they're going to struggle on the straight line.
It was interesting watching the GPS or looking at the GPS data.
Just listen to the crowd for a minute, if we can. Normally, whenever Fernando Alonso goes anywhere in Spain, there is a massive cheer. Oh, we haven't got any mics down there. What a shame.
Never mind.
I was sat yesterday in FP1. I was sat in our office watching the coverage, and the door was closed, and the deafening cheers when Fernando Alonso got out onto the track could be heard quite clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I was saying on the GPS, the Red Bull was actually slower than the Ferrari yesterday, which indicates to me that the engines are running on a very conservative mode in pre-practice.
Hang on, what's happening here?
That's a brake fire.
Right tyre and brakes on the Haas.
Brakes are burning. My rear brakes are burning. The rear right.
Well, we'll box Mick and just come in slow, but just keep moving, obviously.
Yeah, it's still burning, so just be ready with the...
Okay, yeah.
It's
okay,
like
if it's too much, you'll have to find a safe place to stop.
Yeah. Whether he could stop or was just going on a little bit further because it was safer. Mick Schumacher, quite a lot of flames coming from the rear brakes. 7 braking zones on this track, 2 of which are described as heavy. And I wonder where this problem started to manifest itself. Let's have a little look.
So it's up at turn 9, coming over the crest here.
So you can see it's on fire there, isn't it?
Yes, already on the inside of the wheel. Oh my, that is a proper...
I mean,
that is a proper ball of flame.
How he's going to see that quickly, he's going to feel it more than anything. He's going to feel the pedal go long, and that's because obviously the fluid in the brake lines. Oh, I mean, why stick a mechanic in front of a car that's got brakes on fire? I mean,
that's ridiculous. Why would you have the front jackman there?
Somebody needs to take responsibility for that within the team. I mean, if you've not got brakes, you don't stand in front of the car when it's going to stop in the box.
I would imagine that Pete Kroller, the team manager, will be very much having a word with the crew to say, guys, don't do that. That is not the procedure when a guy's got a brake fire. Ted is down there. Ted, you can explain more.
I can explain that they couldn't see. You could only see the fire, and it's still on fire, by the way, and it's now caught fire to the whole of the right rear corner. Every fire marshal in the pit lane has now run down to Haas. And we're just keeping our distance here, or the more responsible of us is keeping our distance here, while they try to extinguish it, because there's all sorts of things aflame here. but you could only see the flames from the rear because there's a sort of shroud that meant that you couldn't actually see which bit of the right rear rim and the brake was on fire. That's why that front jackman was there. As the car came towards you head on, you couldn't see that there was this ball of flames. It's only when they got there. So that's just to explain, if not to excuse, down here. But yeah, that car is definitely out for the rest of the session. And as the damage continues, as everything seems to have caught on from the initial brake fire, and now it's just covered in extinguishant. That's got to be a doubt for qualifying on Mick Schumacher's car. I'm just getting an information from you on Pierre Gasly's engine issue as well, but I'll give that to you later after we've sorted this one out.
You think, Ted, that that's a doubt for qualifying?
I do, yes, yes, absolutely. It's been on fire for a good minute now, Crofty, and now it's absolutely wrecked the right rear corner, and there's going to be damage in all sorts of areas that the flames and the extinguishant has got to. So I'll throw it back to you.
Oh, that'd be such a shame for Mick Schumacher. Q2 in every single qualifying session so far this season. We're on board with Carlos Sainz, Paul.
Yeah, a lap developing nicely. What they can do is just change the whole corner, and they'll have a whole setup with a brake line and everything that will connect on. So if it's nothing internal, and if it's just the simple bolt onto the gearbox, then he should get back out.
We hope so.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We want to see 20 cars for qualifying, and a lot of people here would like to see this man on the front row at least for the third time in his career, or maybe even taking a first ever pole position. And Carlos Sainz goes fastest overall with a 120.4. Top four have all run the soft compound tyre. Mediums for Magnussen, Norris, and Schumacher. A hard tyre for Yuki Tsunoda when he came out onto the track itself.
Look at that brake shroud.
Ouch.
Completely burned.
I mean, you think that's high temperature carbon as well. Because the brakes, when you sometimes end the straight, they can be 450 degrees. Then obviously through the braking zone, but obviously that fire's contained in there because they don't want to let any of that hot air get into the wheel because that overheats the tyre.
I'm trying to understand the cause of that, really, where it's come from, because it's, this is not a track where you traditionally see brake issues, is there? No. So it looks like something's either got blocked in the air duct or something?
It must have done, but to try and explain how little brakes you use here, McLaren had 0 issues here in winter testing, went to Bahrain and couldn't drive more than 4 or 5 laps, I suspect, and had all these issues at the beginning of the year. So strange.
When that Ferrari of Charles Leclerc there went through turn 9, look how the floor was absolutely bang on the track, and creating some magnificent downforce for Charles Leclerc.
He's once again about a quarter of a second, third of a second up on Sainz. This is kind of the trend we saw in FP2 yesterday, didn't we? 3/10 the gap between them. 19.6 was Leclerc's benchmark time yesterday. He's going to be a little bit off that. I think the track still needs to ramp up a bit, but it should still put him comfortably at the top of the times.
2/10 up, Charles Leclerc and his teammate Carlos Sainz, who had his chassis changed yesterday due to a fuel system issue. We'll hopefully have Mattia Binotto on with us in a while to explain more about that, but it's Ferrari 1 and 2 with 18 minutes gone of the session. As you were during FP1 yesterday, but we still have Verstappen, Hamilton and Russell to hit the track in anger.
It's quite normal though, isn't it? Red Bull tend to wait the first half hour of FP3. They don't want to put too much mileage on their race parts or the race engines, so they tend to just wait it out as we see a bit of traffic for Sebastian Vettel as the 2 Mercedes. Now, I'm really interested to see the bouncing, Crofty. Have they got the bouncing under control again? And can they develop a lap time?
Are they going to be brave and try and get more lap time out of it and create some more bouncing that's a level that they can deal with like we see in the Ferrari?
So what was interesting, Paul, yesterday, just watching the on-boards, is they had the bouncing in turn 3 and turn 9, but not on the straight. So clearly whatever upgrades they've brought has changed just the way the downforce is working and the floor is working. So they were losing some performance in turns 3 and turn 9, but across the lap, they were right in the hunt. So let's go on board, Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see to bounce or not to bounce. That is the question as Lewis Hamilton starts his first flying lap of this session, and already it does look a little bit bouncy, doesn't it?
No DRS as well, isn't he? Is he doing a check to see that they're happy? Because obviously you bounce when you're not using DRS, you will be more prone to bounce when you open the rear wing, and that's what they were disappointed. I think it was in Saudi when they took that DRS zone away. It made more pain for the lap.
Onwards towards turn 4, and this is not a push lap where Lewis Hamilton is going to be challenging the Ferraris. You can see he's half a second down already.
Would that be just because of DRS? I mean, DRS will probably lose you 3.5 tenths there, so
Yes.
I wonder why they've done that. Is it purely just to see that they're happy in the race situation, that they can make a ride-out change for the last run to be comfortable? See how he gets through here? He was fairly pinned, wasn't he? Seems like they're carrying a decent amount of downforce.
That's less of a lift than we saw from the Ferraris. He's still obviously losing lap time. I wonder if they're carrying a bit of fuel on board and just trying to, I don't know, do a slightly longer run. I mean, do we think they're really going to race this tyre tomorrow?
What, the soft tyre?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, I do. Because I think that the hard tyre is not one they're going to want to be on. So they're going to have to find another compound, and 2 mediums and a soft might be the way forward for this race tomorrow. Hamilton 6th fastest, 1.2 seconds over off the pace, and with a 1:21.5. That's not full of fuel, but I think there's a fair amount on there. But Perez goes 7th fastest overall. They didn't use the hard tyre last year. I don't think the pace is that great on it. I don't think anyone has come back and said, yeah, the hard tyre, we really love that around Barcelona. 2 mediums and a soft, surely.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay,
We'll see what
I like
happens
it.
tomorrow, but I think it's going to be track temperature of high 40s tomorrow. Let's listen. Just listen to the bouncing.
It's not enough to worry about, is it? It's just skipping.
It's just skimming the deck, and it's a little bit more than yesterday, I must admit, but it doesn't look anywhere as bad as what we saw in FP3 Miami.
Oh, box, sort this DRS out.
Actually, DRS isn't working.
So that was the problem. While Lewis Hamilton was doing that, then George Russell, his teammate, 4 tenths faster, 3rd fastest overall. So Lewis Hamilton had just been out for a lap, and we noted from the commentary box that the DRS wasn't open. Were Mercedes trying a race run, some race conditions, or was there a problem with the DRS? Let's have a listen to the team radio. And the words of Pete Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, suggesting that there was an issue with the DRS and it should have been open. We didn't see George Russell's lap, Paul, but it was 4 tenths faster than Hamilton. So the assumption there would be that he was using DRS.
Yeah, DRS is most of that. And it was actually the first sector where George took most of the lap time out of Lewis. Lewis was actually a couple of tenths quicker at the end of the lap, when obviously you're not using DRS when you're trying to get through this section that we're watching the Ferrari go through. But they want to do that because it's a hydraulic system. You wouldn't want to go into qualifying with any concern that you've not tried it, and they may just put a whole new wing on the car to solve the issue, but it's obviously hydraulically linked, and the hydraulics are obviously working fine, so it's either the actuator or something's not allowing it to obviously open that letterbox.
Sainz crossed the line, even though he set the fastest first sector, couldn't continue that on his second flying lap, so remains a couple of tenths off the pace being set by his teammate Charles Leclerc, who's just starting his latest flying lap now. Meanwhile, we can look at Alex Albon, who's been busy spray painting people's hair red so far in the paddock this weekend, mine included, his team boss included, his team crew included, and raising awareness for the Iceman charity, which is an orphanage in Thailand that Alex visited earlier in the season, where the children there persuaded him to get his hair painted red. It brought him rather good luck in Australia because he scored points for Williams for the first time, and he's decided to keep the trend going. Red seems to be the colour at the moment, not just for Alex Albon's hair, but for the championship leader in the constructors and the drivers, and we can watch Charles Leclerc at the same time as we concentrate on Alex Albon.
At what point is Jos Capito going to paint Ted's hair? What's happening?
That is another question for a notebook coming your way after qualifying today.
Very exciting.
That did not sound nice when he got on the loud pedal there. Between the chicane, it was wheel spinning. It's a car lacking traction. You can see 2.6 seconds down on the quickest time on the board.
Traction's so important here. You can lose so much time in the final sector.
The final sector on a qualifying lap, I mean, if you've taken way too much out in sector 1 and 2, you arrive there and it's like pulling the handbrake up. The car just doesn't allow you any support, and that's the one thing you want to avoid. It's almost worth sacrificing a tenth in sector 1 not to just ultimately take that last edge out of it.
And we've also seen both Ferraris set a decent first sector on their second flying lap and then lose grip and pace for the remainder of the lap. Suggests rather that in these high temperatures, 44 degrees at the moment, track temperature, the tyres not lasting for 2 quick laps. Ted, down to you.
In the pit lane of heat-affected failures, as I'm going to name the Barcelona Circuit de Catalunya pit lane today, back at AlphaTauri and Pierre Gasly's, now that we've sorted out, while the smouldering remains of Mick Schumacher's right rear car, as they still try to put out the burning. There's still, as I left it a few minutes ago, Crofty, there was still smoke coming out of that garage.
Really?
But in any case, Gasly's issue is, again, an overheating engine, but this one's caused by a failed heat shield, which is quite interesting. You don't hear them very often. Normally, these engines, power units, are very well shielded from other bits that have got burnt, but that wasn't the case here. For some reason, the heat shield came loose, or was not there for some reason, or came off, and it overheated a load of stuff in the engine bay. I think it caused a bit of an oil leak as well, which is the smoke you could see around the engine bay. So they're out for the session. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. They won't be able to fix it for the end of free practice 3. So he will very much be on his back foot going into qualifying, which they are confident of fixing this car in time for him. We'll keep on top of the Mick Schumacher news as we get it.
Best qualifying of 6th here for Pierre Gasly back in 2019, where he finished that race in 6th place too. We can see from the drone shot now George Russell making his way around the final few corners. You have to be a little bit careful on your braking into turn 13. Get the chicane right in the race. If you get it wrong, you're a bit of a sitting duck all the way down the main straight. Still not quite sure about that chicane here. It's taken all the speed and fun out of the final corner, as far as I'm concerned, and of course it's meant that the absolute lap record is rather different to what it used to be, because it's slowed the laps down. We're on board now with Sergio Perez.
You can see he's just not comfortable to crank the steering on that he wants on that Red Bull. It's definitely nervous, struggling with rear grip, and you can see a bit over rotation there as you go into the chicane. The rear's dancing around, so we know Checo likes a bit more understeer in the car, and that's generally when he's at harm with it. But Verstappen's just on the quickest first sector of anybody so far.
Just going to say, while Perez goes 3rd fastest with a decent second flying lap, we really ought to focus on his teammate Max Verstappen, who is flying on his first push lap.
The interesting thing I can see, and it's kind of what you have carried over from yesterday, Ferrari was very quick on the first lap, was unable to improve apart from the first sector on its second lap, but George Russell and Red Bull with Perez have been able to go quicker on their second time. So they're taking less out of the tyre, aren't they? They're not
rather suggests a better race pace for Mercedes and for Red Bull.
Yeah.
And Ferrari maybe locking out the front row again.
Well, you were saying that the Ferrari deg looked quite high.
Yeah.
You would say that's probably why. They're still carrying over even on a qualifying lap.
Very intriguing high downforce rear wing, as you can see the slot gap opening up for Max Verstappen, who goes 2nd fastest, so 2/10 between Leclerc and Verstappen.
4/10 in the mid-sector though, that's massive, isn't it?
The same as yesterday.
It's only a few corners as well, isn't it?
It was exactly the same yesterday, 4/10 middle sector, every single set of tyres.
So why are Ferrari then so much better in that middle sector? What is it that the Ferrari's got that Red Bull need?
You know, the car's developed at a certain ride height range, and it's maybe just crucially where it's absolutely in its optimum. I mean, this will show any flaw in any car this track, downforce wise, and you know, the speed range you develop to try and go through the whole season, and it maybe just falls perfectly for them. But you would say coming into this race, this is kind of a Ferrari track.
The middle sector's got a bit of everything, hasn't it? You've got turns 4 and 7, which are sort of medium to high speed, turn 5 hairpin, and then you've got turn 9, which is a super quick right-hand corner over the crest. So the middle sector has got a whole range of corners, but not much of a straight, and I think, yeah, it's playing to Ferrari's strength, as Paul said.
Where you will punish the tyre, though, in the race, and where probably Ferrari struggle, is in what Verstappen's able to then get back in the last sector. That's the sector you don't want to be sliding around on, because you overheat the tyres, then you get into sector 1, which is very high speed, and that's where you start to really shed lap time.
Let us head down to the Red Bull pit wall. Ferrari pit wall. Sorry, I'm getting my Reds all mixed up. Mattia Binotto, the team principal, is with us this weekend. Mattia, thanks so much for joining us. Before we talk about what's happening on the track at the moment, Carlos, you changed his chassis overnight. What was the need for that?
Yeah, we had to change the chassis because simply we had a fuel leakage on his on his fuel system, which was not clear where it was coming from. So we would have lost time, simply try to understand where it's coming from and to repair, and we opted for a change of chassis.
Excellent. So what did you concentrate on overnight? Where do you feel you need to make improvements going into today and tomorrow?
Looking at yesterday and all the data, I think simply it's car balance, making sure that between understeer in the first part and obviously traction in the second, we have the right car balance and setup for the drivers. You have certainly overheating a lot of the tires here, but the balance is key, is a key element. So we focus on setup, setup and setup. setup, and tyre degradation. Is that a big worry for you this weekend? I think it's a big worry for all the teams, for us as well. Yesterday in the high fuel ranks, I think we are not all right. We had quite a high tyres degradations, more than what we were expecting or more than our direct competitors. So we work a lot on that during the night, and we came with a different type of approach on the setup today, which hopefully will be the right one to be right competitive tomorrow on the race.
Absolutely. Just finally, you mentioned your competitors. Is that Red Bull and Mercedes, or just Red Bull? Where do you see the challenge this weekend? Oh, try again, Mattia. I don't think we can hear you.
Sorry, I was on the wrong button. But yeah, I think that Red Bull will be the one. Mercedes has done a step forward, no doubt. They have improved, but I believe that Max will be the direct competitor for the race tomorrow.
Mattia, thanks ever so much indeed. Fingers crossed we can speak to you during qualifying as well. It's been great to have you with us for this weekend as Lewis Hamilton sets off on another flying lap. DRS is fixed. Mercedes say it's worth half a second a lap. And I tell you what, let's concentrate on this lap. You can turn your audio up as we follow Hamilton's progress. Yeah. So Hamilton, sixth fastest, nearly 9/10 off the pace of Charles Leclerc on what was his second push lap. Now, before we focused on Lewis Hamilton and the audio up lap, and whilst we were talking to Mattia Binotto, Max Verstappen was giving some feedback on the team radio. Let's have a little listen to this. Right, so turn 5, Paul di Resta, into the middle sector we go, and Max says it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. We're looking at the front wing of the Mercedes of George Russell, and some comparisons on the screen between that and the Red Bull.
The oscillations, that's what we're looking at. The oscillations on the Mercedes, look how much that shakes compared to the Red Bull one. And then we'll look at the just as they come off the curb, it's quite something, isn't it? I mean,
it's massive. You would almost think, you know, something with the porpoising as well as within that, because everybody's saying the strength. But yeah, I mean, that just shows you how much carbon can move if you engineer it the right way. But equally, get the strength in it. It's incredible. It's incredible to think the wishbones are made the same and how much they would flex. But with Max not able to get the front end in it, that's surprising around here. But that shows you they're trying to look after the rear tyres. And I think what you would want is the understeer balance, and that's probably what's helping them in the race run, because you're not getting that over rotation. You're not got the slip angle of the tyre overheating the surface, because it's the rear tyre deg that just limits you on the lap times. That's where the degradation comes in, and that's where you just see that gap opening up to others. So it is protection mode. You have to survive, but of course qualifying is critical around here. Track position can be key.
think 23 of the last 31 races around the circuit have been won from pole. Just to illustrate your point, as Kevin Magnussen's gone 5th fastest, only 3.5 tenths off the pace. So the track's ramping up. They got another set of soft tyres now.
Formula 1 2022 is a bit different. We can follow each other a bit closer, so we shouldn't. But it is critical. The next 2 Grand Prix, I think a Saturday afternoon plays a big part.
Yeah, I mean, look, Monaco could be another glorious procession, and we'll cover Monaco when we get to it. But I think this is a big test of the new regulations. And, you know, Karun, well done on your stats. You are absolutely right. 23 out of 31. But it's 28 out of 31 from the front row.
You agreeing with stats, Crofty?
Oh, yeah, he's absolutely... He is the stat expert on that one.
Oh, no, I'll bow down to you. I'll go history expert, and I'll take down to your stats.
I'm passing the anorak to you on this one, Karun Chandok. Meanwhile, as we saw him down at Haas a while ago, the flames in Spain burn mainly in the pit lane. Today, Ted Kravitz. I thought I'd get that in.
Very good.
Craig Slater's right in my gags for me today.
Very good, very good. Did I just hear Karun Chandok say he's no expert on F1 history? Karun, have you been replaced by aliens in the night?
No, I said I was a history expert, not necessarily a stat expert. Right. Because Crofty will tell you about stats about camels on the outside of the circuit in Bahrain and things like that.
Very good.
From a camel farm.
But yeah, Mattia Binotto's spot on when he says that everyone's searching for setup. Up and down the pit lane as well. So Lewis Hamilton's just come into the pit lane, has wanted a front wing change. So I've just watched, and actually you could see the drill. They used this little drill to do a quick front wing adjust, and it was so much of a change you could actually see the front flap coming up. Normally these changes are so small that there's just a quick jab of a drill and it just comes up a little bit. But in Hamilton you could see it was a fair bit more front downforce. Sainz also on this run making a change to his front suspension.
Set up, says Mattia Binotto. Has it improved? Carlos Sainz time, he goes quickest again with a 1:20.1. The track very much coming to him towards the end of that run, not in the first sector. Charles Leclerc has absolutely blitzed the middle sector once more, and the championship leader now goes 3.5 tenths quicker than his teammate Carlos Sainz.
That's a big statement there, because 3.5 tenths around the circuit, that's a big margin.
He's not going to like looking at the data going into qualifying. You know, it's home Grand Prix.
No, it's a massive difference. 2 tenths in the middle sector and nearly 2 tenths in the final sector as well.
The sectors you gave me, is that to the fastest or to?
That's to George, so that's the best sectors to George.
I only want to know the fastest.
And in the past, he has been the one that's been the fastest, but not as it stands at the moment. It's a change of approach down at Mercedes for Lewis Hamilton for the course of this season. We've got 22.5 minutes to go of this session. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, first and second fastest on their second flying laps. Verstappen, Perez, third and fourth. So 1:21.1, the best lap for Lewis Hamilton. Now, I know Ferrari have gone again on a new set of soft tyres, Paul, but it's quite a gap, isn't it?
It's a lot of time to find, and what surprises me is I would assume they've got less fuel in the car in this session than they had in FP2, because that's just always the way you kind of plan your weekend. It's like when the track rubber's in, they seem to struggle that little bit more. They actually get slower by the looks of it.
Oh, he's gone wide there, though. That's not going to help him. I mean, he was 6 tenths down in the first 2 sectors. It doesn't look like a comfortable car, does it? Already the rear tyres, he's really struggling for grip here on the back end through 12. Let's look at the chicane as he tries to put the power down, and he's going to be 8-9 tenths off, isn't he? He's going to be sort of Kevin Magnussen territory by the time it comes across the line. In fact, even slower, 1.1 seconds. So, yeah.
It's not a given, is it, that you always get quicker, but you don't detune performance out your car overnight. You've normally got more engine, you've normally got fresher car parts and better floor, better condition.
Well, absolutely. But if you ask George Russell about Miami, that's exactly what happened.
But everyone else is able to do it, so I don't understand that car, why it's working different.
What are Mercedes doing on a Friday night into a Saturday final practice that over a single lap is not giving them the pace that we think they should have, but then come the race actually helps them? Because their race pace has been pretty good. Look, George Russell's the only driver to finish in the top 5 all season long. He's got consistency. So what are Mercedes doing? Where are they sacrificing?
I can tell you what they did last night is they had Anthony Davidson in the simulator until
We're not going to blame him
late
today,
into the night. No, but what it is, you know, they're pushing hard to try and find a solution because the truth of that matter is they don't know 100% definitively where the performance went, right?
Yeah.
So they, what I can say, and what we all can say, is they're still working to find that answer because Paul's absolutely right. What happened in Miami was so confusing to everybody, especially George Russell. He went slower in qualifying on a brand new surface that was being, you know, rubbered in and gripped up. He went slower in qualifying.
More engine.
Yeah, more engine mode than he did in FP2 on Friday. And that is completely baffling to the entire paddock.
And I'm sure they've not tried to reinvent it last night. You know, if anything, they would have taken a lot of, you know, credit out of yesterday, just kind of polished it, little tweaks here and there. Track temperature's the same, conditions are the same. It's not like we're seeing anything hugely out the ordinary.
No, not at all. Yeah, even the wind is pretty much the same and definitely blowing in the same direction. Because I'm looking at the, actually look at the Canadian flag right opposite our commentary box at the moment, and it's showing a headwind down the main straights. We watch Alex Albon and Valtteri Bottas out on the track currently. And see, Bottas is right there again, isn't he? Just in front of his former teammate and the man that replaced him at Mercedes in 6th place currently for Valtteri Bottas, who, by the way, one of 3 drivers to have finished on the podium here in the last 4 years, the others being Hamilton and Verstappen. Same guys on the podium each of the last 4 years. Alex Albon just finishing his latest flying lap. You'll see George Russell's just starting his and has actually gone fastest in the first sector. Albon crosses the line, goes 11th fastest. Valtteri Bottas will be next to cross the line, and when he does so, I think we can focus more on George Russell as Bottas stays 6th quickest. Russell with a 22.1 in the first sector is still up after a very good middle sector.
That must have been a used tyre for Lewis. That couldn't have been a new set. Maybe Ferrari have confused as it went out of sync.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton, we just saw a few moments ago going 7th fastest overall, and we wondered why the pace as he came back out again was struggling in comparison to others. Here is George Russell on a new set of these soft compound tyres. We've been having a debate as to whether Mercedes are dialing out pace over one lap to improve their pace in the race, but there was certainly enough pace for George Russell there, only a 10.5 behind Charles Leclerc.
That's good news, isn't it, for qualifying?
Superb news for qualifying if you want to see a bit more variety. Not so good news if you want to see a Ferrari 1-2 for the second week in a row. And not great if you want to see Max Verstappen on pole. Here's the car performance rankings at the moment. Verstappen on the straights has the best car. Straight line speed for Red Bull's been strong all season. Hamilton 4/10 back, but only 4/10 back. That, compared to Red Bull, that's quite the catch-up from Mercedes in a straight line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing similar trends to the early part of the season in some ways, aren't we? Obviously, Mercedes have seemingly raised their game, but Haas once again in play. Kevin Magnussen 6th. Valtteri Bottas doing a great job. That lap we were looking at earlier is still holding at 7th place, but more importantly, Joe is in 9th as well. So both Alfa Romeos in the top 10, and the Alpines, Ocon again snuck in there. Alonso was very quick yesterday, Crofty, wasn't he? He was only half a second off the pace yesterday.
He was, and it was about half a second off the pace on his first flying lap on the soft tyres. What we're waiting for is to see what Ricciardo and Norris can do on their soft tyres, and Stroll and Vettel as well.
Yeah.
Worth watching that Aston Martin, heavily revised, heavily newly designed, heavily influenced by the Red Bull. Is it enough to drag them into that midfield fight?
It's not a dead certain who's going to be in the front end of that midfield battle this year anywhere you go, is it? Which is good. It shows you the differences in the cars and how they're working at different places, and the temperature can play a huge part in that. The other thing, F1 rookies, they get less of a break at this point in the year, don't they, when they come to Barcelona? It's the point where they've kind of got Grand Prix, they've done it, been through the whole thing, done lots of miles around here. The teams kind of expect them a bit more out of them to be closer to the teammate and don't give them that break that they've got when they say arrive in Melbourne for the first time.
No, that's very true. Every driver racing here will know this track like the back of their hand, whether they're racing as Zhou Guanyu is for the first time in a Formula 1 car, or whether, like Zhou Guanyu, they've been here many times in the junior formulas as well. Well, he qualified and finished third, didn't he, I think, in the F2 feature races that he had here, did Zhou Guanyu. Fernando Alonso making his way down towards the first corner. Let's follow this a bit more closely, Karun.
So looking high up from the helicopter here around this fantastic turn 3. It's become a corner again, which I like. It's no longer comfortably flat out bit of straight that they just drove around. Alonso a long way down on this first intermediate time. Let's see if he can recover some of it as the lap unfolds, drops downhill. Look at the sea of people in the grandstands here. And this, I remember, Crofty, this hill on the left-hand side, out of 7, you look at the people there. That used to just be the Fernando Alonso hill, wasn't it? All the people from...
sea of blue and yellow, wasn't it?
From Oviedo, and, you know, it all come down to cheer him on. But PRS Open into the cockpit in the driver's eye view, camera in his helmet, 2.5 down, so he's not really improving on this lap.
That can't be new tyres, can it?
No.
Well, looking at the state of the tyres, is a band, isn't it? You see on the front left that's forming.
I mean, generally you can see when they're starting the lap if they've got a nice shiny edge, but we weren't close enough to see that.
The two Aston Martins are on new tyres, I think, at the moment, so we've seen them now go. Vettel up into 9th, Stroll is still in the middle sector as we look at Alonso finish his lap, and he stays down at 13th.
I bumped into Fernando Alonso at Miami Airport on the way back from Miami. He spent a bit of time out in Miami. I'd taken a road trip down to Key West, and we had a bit of a chat, and I noticed that he still had his arms strapped with a support strapping on there. And I said, "Is that after Australia?" And he said, "Yeah, it is actually. I'm still recovering from the crash that I had in qualifying in Australia, because it was a hydraulic leak, if you remember, and he was trying to fight it and turn the car and had his hands on the steering wheel when he made contact with the barrier. And he said at night time he has to sleep with the strapping on, and is still recovering from it, which I found quite interesting, because I think Australia is quite a long time ago. But still the after effects of that crash live on.
Some will say he's getting older as well. No, to be honest, he's done a very good job this year. You know, that so far, if that lap had developed, I would have been interested to see where that lap was going to go. I mean, it was incredible.
This is why I say he's one of the unluckiest drivers on the grid, because he would have been, I think, top 4 in that. You can see the two Red Bulls just coming out of the garage on their out lap. Just under 13 minutes to go, Ted Kravitz. We want to see where they stack up in comparison to the rest, but where are you?
I'm in the Tierra del Fuego, Crofty. There you go.
Really?
It's taken me 10 minutes to come up with that one. I'm in the Haas garage, or just outside it, where the after effects of Mick Schumacher's fire on the rear of his car is still being managed and sorted out. Can you see they're still damping down after that whole corner? Can you see it's full of damp rags, which you'll see a mechanic come and pour water on as they desperately try to cool everything down. You can see Joe Bauer and his assistants from the FIA just on the right-hand side as we look at it, and the other FIA guy's side on the left-hand, as just everything just got too hot, as I was talking about. Not only the brake drum, not only the axle, disc, caliper, everything caught fire. And yeah, you know, when you're unlucky enough to suffer a fire somewhere at home, the fire brigade comes and then starts the dampening down after they put the flames out, and that's the stage we're at. That's why I get so pessimistic that we might not see Mick Schumacher in qualifying. COVID hasn't restarted here with the masks, but all the mechanics are now wearing their COVID masks so as not to breathe in the smoke that's still trying to be, you know, removed, or that from that
I'd
corner.
imagine it's quite smelly down there,
yeah,
isn't it?
so they put their COVID masks back on just to help them with all the fumes.
Thank you very much, Ted. Perfect timing. Verstappen round the final corner. Paul di Resta. Here's a lap of Barcelona.
Yeah, he took very good care of them on the out lap, not to take any of the goodness out of them. But you can see slightly downhill, DRS is open. See where the cars are rubbing as they get on the brakes into one that leads very quickly into 2. You probably have to compromise slightly your exit at 1 now to make sure you're in position to get through 3. You wind your way through here, end of sector 1 coming up. We'll see as he crosses this line where it's going to put him. And it's a very good sector 1, a 22.2. So George Russell was a bit quicker than that, but you can see Verstappen on the reference time that we've got the best of Leclerc. Is a couple of tenths up. Into 5, this is where he said he was struggling. He couldn't get the rotation in the car. He was struggling with the front end. Would do it. Hamilton behind Verstappen is actually a tenth quicker in sector 1. Through 7, up through 8, into 9. Can he stay flat? Car looks very stable. It hardly even looks like he's pushing. Well off that exit curve that Lando Norris found himself on top of yesterday. Into 10, which leads into 11. So Verstappen, a bit of a better middle sector, and he's had a 29.9. I think the Ferrari was a 29.7, and he's generally been able to match him through this very slow speed part of the lap. Into 13, right, bring the car back across to the right hand side, I was going to say, through the left, and here's Hamilton, who's actually further up the road.
He's on a better lap, I think, or was on a better lap until the final sector. Compared to Verstappen, a 120.0, so not quite into the 119s. Verstappen eventually into the 119s with a 119.8, difference of about 2 tenths between Verstappen and Hamilton, and it was all in that final sector where Verstappen had the advantage over the Mercedes. Perez 6th fastest, and well, only 6th fastest. Red Bull will be hoping for a little bit more come qualifying. He lost out in the final sector, Karun, too.
Yeah, he had a poor final second. Lost a quarter of a second to his previous own best. So, he might have made a mistake or something. We didn't see all of it. But he's there or thereabouts. But again, by the way, Russell a tenth ahead of Lewis, like we saw yesterday.
You stick a couple of tenths, 2.5 tenths into Sergio's. We've got 6 guys fighting for the front row. Not saying necessarily pole, but the front row.
I'm going to throw something else into the mix as well. You know, there's been a lot of talk about cars being heavy during the course of this season and struggling to make the minimum weight. And I don't know, in terms of the Red Bull and the Ferrari, where they are in terms of that minimum weight, but there's a theory that the Mercedes might just be a little too heavy for its own good. And you could probably take a couple of tenths a lap off around Barcelona for the weight that they've got.
So my understanding was in Melbourne, the Ferrari was down to the weight limit with the upgrade they brought there. And at Imola, the Red Bull was still about 4 kilos over. The weight limit, by the way, 798.
Yeah.
But I believe the upgrade they brought here has brought the Red Bull nearly to the weight limit. Because Helmut Marko in particular has been sort of beating the drum quite a bit, hasn't he? Into
Max,
about his engineers.
I mean, where do you come up with 798? Why do you not just make it a round figure of 800?
It's a classic F1, Paul, where they had a number.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where they came with. They had a number. Then they calculated the weight difference for the 18-inch wheels and tyres. Then they thought, we need a bit more for the brakes. Then the teams all lobbied for a bit more. And then it's just classic F1. They're like, instead of going, we'll have increments of 5 kilos, they go, we'll give you 2, or we'll give you 3.
The teams wanted 10 kilos more or something like that, and the FIA went, no, you can have 3.
Yeah, but if you look at like all the sheets that the teams have got, they give to their partners, and you give to somebody in the grandstand, 800 is just a nicer number than 798 to look at.
It's just based on what you've just said there and my information. If that Mercedes was on the same weight as the Red Bull and the Ferrari, I think they'd all be converging within a tenth of each other.
I think there's still some of them more over than you think.
Yeah, I think the Mercedes is heavy.
And I think there's another car that's more overweight than you think as well.
Which one's that?
Well,
normally when we discuss overweight, I like to keep out of it.
But the reality is, well, there's no question with that one,
exactly,
is there,
Crofty? Where are you going? Which car's overweight? Which one needs to go on a diet, Paul? Come on.
But you know, they were, you know, not even close to getting to the weight first couple of races, not even close, and I don't see how you can get that off that quickly.
Go on, give us a
It's a lot of cost. No, I mean, I think it's clear. Red Bull were obviously way heavier than Ferrari were at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think they're closer. There's probably 2-3 kilos in it still.
And you need to leave us now, I'm afraid.
I do.
Have a wander down to the paddock, and we'll see you on the Skypad in a moment. Karun Chandler, Paul di Resta can stay with us here in the lovely coolness of the commentary box. And I said we were waiting to see Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo on the soft tyres, going for a final flying run. Well, here we are with Lando Norris. It's a fairly competitive first sector from him too.
That is a very decent first sector. You can see, I mean, the shot doesn't tell you if it's got understeer or got oversteer, but you can see that front flat backing off into 7. This is the apex. What's that sausage curb? You don't want to be on top of that. What's he going to do through here? So much more of a lift than Mercedes are taking as well. So that McLaren obviously trimmed out a bit, or has just not got the downforce that the Mercedes got at the moment. But That's the worry for McLaren, isn't it? If Mercedes have regained their performance, that kind of puts them back a bit. You know, they're fighting for less points further down.
And Norris going into this race after his 15-race finishing streak was rather abruptly ended by a collision with Pierre Gasly in Miami. Through the final few corners we go, the chicane, and then onto the final right-hander. You take it at about 60 miles an hour when you get to the apex, and then feed that throttle through. And all the way down the straight, Norris goes 7th fastest overall. And you're right, Mercedes in the past might have been a little bit behind. Norris could have been top 5 and he would have been a lot happier with that.
They're out of touch, just slightly out of touch now, aren't they? On that, but it's still fairly decent. They'll take confidence that they're maybe just a couple of tenths ahead of Magnussen, Bottas, Vettel. But you know, for McLaren, when they've had this prediction, they've just been going all the way up, and then obviously we've picked up Hamilton. I mean, the car just looks alive now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Mercedes.
There was a theory that it was a very efficient car in terms of switching on the downforce, and that was causing the porpoising problems, because it was so quickly attaching itself that the air had nowhere to go, and the bouncing was quite severe.
Big slide as he got on the loud pedal there. There was not much rear tyre left, but the interesting thing for me here, Crofty, I'm still scratching my head, because you look at the Ferrari Red Bull concept and you think, well, which one is best? Which one gives you the most? Completely different ways of creating the downforce. And then you thought, well, Mercedes has got it very wrong. Well, they're now in the mix and they've got a completely different concept again. So it's more about how the architecture and all your things work together, as opposed to redesigning your car to look like somebody else.
It's the sum of all the parts, and you can redesign a car to look like someone else, but you've still got a different engine and a different gearbox
and
in there.
At some point, one of these cars is going to have a bigger scope to develop further, and they're going to get a benefit, and somebody's going to struggle and going to take a long time to sort it, and could, you know, have the porpoising that Mercedes have eventually fixed with it. And that's what's so interesting about where this is going this year.
And I think, Ted Kravitz, that's why Mercedes have stuck with this no side pod concept, because they feel that has more scope for development over the long term.
The next few years, you mean, once they get it right? Yeah, indeed. We might look back on these first 5 races, Crofty, and say, do you remember the time when we thought this car was rubbish, and actually it's great, and they're winning championships again? Well, maybe we will. But the engine you can hear in the background is the Mercedes, not of the Mercedes, but of the Aston Martin Mercedes. And Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel just going out again. And while other people are having problems, Pierre Gasly not managing to complete the session, and we've had the issues of Mick Schumacher's Haas and other people having their difficulties in the midfield, just so Aston Martin are having an uneventful session. So they're both out now on a used set of soft tyres, but going about their business, happy with their upgrades. It's almost like, Crofty, you know, when you cast your mind back all those years when you were at school and something unfortunate happened, and, you know, your trousers fell down in the playground and everyone was laughing at you, and you were the focus. And, you know, the next day, or you just wanted to sort of disappear into the background and say, no one look at me. That's almost the feeling I get down here at Aston Martin. While everybody's been talking about them for the last day and a half, they're just now sort of, you know, hiding behind their hands and saying, oh, we'll just go about our business. Nobody look at us now for the rest of the day.
Let us not draw any attention to ourselves today. I was reminded of my school days in the week when I had to fill in my visa application for the United States of America, where they wanted me to list where I went to school and the dates. And it's that long ago, Paul, I really struggled to remember. Honestly, I did. And I'm sure one day the same will happen to you. My school doesn't even exist anymore. 2 minutes to go, and Esteban Ocon is back in the garage. So he's 10th fastest, 1.1 seconds off Charles Leclerc. There is, I think, a very competitive fight coming up for, shall we say, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in Q3.
Top 10.
Yeah, but to get into Q3, there's a lot of cars that are going to fancy their chances. And one little mistake from a driver could ruin it.
And it's a place you could almost do with your eyes closed, you know, in terms of vision, what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it. But it's whether the car's underneath you to do that. Whether you've got enough front ends to think about qualifying, but equally not too much for the race. Has that compromise been there? The teams, of course, have got all that data. Are they overthinking it? Have they went a step too far and trying to go out the performance window? it's just coming back to Barcelona, and it's just, you know, new parts in the car. Do they work as they should when you get right down into the crunch of qualifying, when you've got the fuel out it and speeds have increased and braking distances have shortened? And that's what I love about coming here.
Yeah, it is.
And the tapas.
Well, that as well. That is very true. It is a fabulous track to test driver and machine in combination.
I don't like that corner.
You don't?
I don't like how they've changed that corner.
No?
But
I don't like the chicane. I don't want to see that chicane. I actually want to see drivers, you know, leaning on the penultimate corner and the final corner and really testing it there. But if your car works well here, then Laura Thumb says it's going to work well pretty much everywhere else during the course of the season. But you can get traditionally some quite dull races here. We've not always had dull races. We've had some epic races in the past. But there was a time, Paul, when you and I would stand in the commentary box here and the cars had crossed the line at the end of the first lap and nothing much would change for another 65 laps. But I think this year that might be going out of the window. I think we have a lot more competition up and down the grid, cars that can follow a lot more closely. And I've not looked forward to a Spanish Grand Prix as much as I'm looking forward to this weekend in some time.
I think every Grand Prix you go to at the moment, you've got to look forward to, and you get Hamilton, Russell, and amongst the Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez.
And we had this yesterday while you were down in Portimao. This was a graphic yesterday, and we all went, really? Car performance rankings on the straights, Hamilton ahead of Verstappen. Well, once again,
that new Mercedes engine, isn't it?
Well, they have got a new Mercedes engine. That is very true.
See, it's easy, Crofty.
But you wouldn't have said that 4 races ago, would you?
You wouldn't have. Everybody was saying how bad the Mercedes-Benz engine was, giving them a hard time, and it clearly wasn't. But yeah, a fresh engine can make a difference. We did see in Brazil last year when they brought a new engine, the difference it can make. And I'm sure things have not moved on dramatically, so you would see the degradation from the other one, and maybe that's the point where they want to kickstart the season and do it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put the old one back in for Monaco.
Because you don't quite need the power in Monaco, you need the precision. And a lot of drivers you can ask about that, not least Charles Leclerc, who got pole and then couldn't take part in his home race and goes to Monaco after another accident, actually in the historic, in Niki Lauda's old car, albeit not his fault. I think the brake disc shattered, didn't it, before he approached Rascasse. But hopefully this year he's got all his bad luck out of the way when it comes to the Monaco Grand Prix. And, well, for the 3rd session in a row, Charles Leclerc finishes up top of the pile.
Do you call it bad luck last year in qualifying?
Well, it's bad luck that he had a crash and then they managed to give the car the once-over and then something else went wrong on his way to the grid.
But we're all thinking it after qualifying. No?
Yeah, well, we were. But it wasn't the gearbox, it was the drive shaft, wasn't it? From memory on that one. It's always bad luck. Although the bad luck came because he crashed in the first place. I'm being more generous, shall we say. Look, it's a Ferrari 1 and 5. It's a Red Bull 2 and 6. And it's a Mercedes 3 and 4. How about that for a practice session?
Pretty decent, isn't it?
Yeah. And they're all separated by half a second, the top 6. I think we've got a competitive qualifying here. No doubt, though, that Ferrari have the edge.